There we are. See, I didn't let Irish Demon fuck up my shit today. No Irish Demon tech fail for me. What is going on, everybody? Johnny O from the Plot Hole. It is time to have a little bit of fun. Really quick, we're going to say hello to the folks in the side chat, and then we are going to get down to business. Elizabeth Sylvester, hello, good to see you. Brian Powell, I saw your message like the second I pressed go live. I saw your message about I would have waited to make you fly to Texas, but yeah. Good evening, Mayor. Good to see you, Casey Cooper. Good old boy. So glad the God Hater is not coming on tonight. I don't have any God Haters. There are people who do not accept the assertion that there is a God. That's different, but whatever. Prim, we are there. We are there yet. Sir Little Wolf, good to see you. Let's see here. Who else we have? Brooke, good to see you. Brooke. Vert to Ferk, always fun to see you. Arian Rod, good to see you. Mel Roden. Oh, Arian Rod. The 16th, 17th, and 18th of April. Hard pencil that in. Once I put the deposit down on the location, then that is good to go. You know what I'm talking about. Mel Roden, good to see you. Let's see. Aniceto Molinado, good to see you. Rosine, always good to see you. Let's see. Robert, good says this looks cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Stevie with the Tridents. That's right, because we're all Tridents. Speaking of Tridents, I have a Master Trident who's going to appear with me tonight. We're going to get him on here in just a second. Yeah, we're all Tridents because that's what we are. Whatever, who cares? You should see, I'm not sure if it's pinned, but you should see a pinned, no, I don't want to remove it. Yeah, so the product is pinned. That shirt is going away tonight. It's gone after tonight. So if you want it, get it. Otherwise, it goes away. Petty Deb, good to see you. All right, let's do this. Let's go ahead and bring up the bluest of tyrants, or tridents, my mistake. The bluest of tridents. The beariest of bears. We have Senior Blue Bear. Or, there we go. There's Senior Blue Bear. This transition button gets stuck. So now you're here. Good to see you, Mr. Or should I say Officer Blue Bear?
Hola, mi amigo.
Captain, we'll call you Captain Blue Bear. We'll give you a
It's
promotion.
actually Sergeant.
Well, I just gave you promotion. It's a field promotion, so you know it has to be true. So now you get to go back to your precinct and be like, check it out. Johnny O from the Plot Hole gave me a field promotion. Boom, I'm a captain now, bitches.
As long as I get the pay to go with it.
I'll take 10% as your manager. Thor Rasmussen celebrates 25 months of membership, says, woke up just in time. Good morning, all. Good morning, Thor. Thank you for the 25 months. Golly, that's over 2 years. Holy shit. You might be the longest running member. Just might. What's up, Zachariah Hooper? Okay, so I've got Blue Bear on tonight because doing the things that I do, covering the videos, the sovereign citizens, the First Amendment auditors, there are often things that are thrown around that maybe we want a little bit more clarification on. Okay, so often you hear tons of terms like Terry versus Ohio, or it's a Terry stop, or whatever. You know what I mean? All this stuff, and I think that there's some misunderstandings about what exactly it is that you do as a police officer. So obviously, you go by Sergeant Blue Bear in the field, wherever that field may be. That's like what's on your name tag. So when it's name and badge number, it's Sergeant Blue Bear, and badge number D's nuts, right?
Sometimes. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, Johnny. Depending upon that department's policies and procedures, we don't have to identify.
That's the thing, right? And that's something that I've come across often. You'll get these folks talking about, well, it's your policy, it's your policy. Yet when it's, for instance, the SSA office policy of you not being a jackass and having to leave when they ask them to, then they're like, no, I don't have to follow your policy because it's not a law. It's interesting.
Yeah,
What works?
and that's the thing, man. Some departments have that policy to where they have to identify with a name and badge number.
Right.
In my department, we don't have to. The reason I know this, because I write the policy.
See? You make the rules.
Exactly.
When you make the rules, no, I mean, but that's an important distinction to make, right? Because they think that for some reason, name and badge, like Long Island Audit, for instance, has this knack for just a name and badge number, just immediately name and badge number, right? Same
Mm-hmm.
Chili and all these other idiots, they'll just walk up to a random police officer, name and badge number, and demand that they identify. And even in the precinct's policies that say they do have to identify, that's only if they initiate a stop. If you just walk up like some jackass and name and badge number, they can tell you to go spit.
Yeah, pretty much. Because then they'll say, "Oh, you initiated a contact." No, you initiated the contact. I didn't.
Right.
So I don't have to tell you anything. You can go pound sand.
Exactly.
So that works. That works both ways. And for them to, in a lot of videos I've seen, oh, name and badge number, it's in your policy. Really?
Yeah. Like there's a
I
new
didn't
one
know
that's going
this.
around, right? There's a new one. Sorry about that. My animals don't seem to want to be quiet today. We have company over that hanging out with the wife and kids, so
Ah, there it is.
these animals, these silly turtles. Kidding, those are dogs. Calm down, people. I don't even know what I was saying anymore. I get so distracted so easily
We
nowadays.
were talking about policy and
Right. Okay. Yes.
name
We're
and
talking
badge.
about policies and name and badge numbers and whatnot. So there's this new video that's out. I'm sure people have seen it. Yes, Zachary Hooper. Absolutely. There are this lady who's a sovereign citizen tries that sovereign citizen nonsense after she gets pulled over for speeding, and it turns out she, just happens to be also holding some cocaine and other fun things, or she's wanted for cocaine possession, or don't remember exactly what it was, but she tries that name and badge number. Well, I'm requesting a supervisor, and guy says, "Oh yeah, like me requesting your driver's license." And the thing that gets me is if I ask for a sergeant, you have to give me a sergeant. Like, no, I don't.
No.
That's your discretion, correct?
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Now,
Because,
as I understand it, the only time that you really want to bring a sergeant in is if not only time you want, but the times that you would want to bring a sergeant in would be for what exactly? Like if somebody's being a little unruly, you need to kind of have second eyes to make sure that you're not doing anything out of line, stepping sideways or anything like that, correct?
well, that would be one reason. But the main reason that you would bring in a supervisor is if that person does have a complaint.
Right.
If, say, one of my officers is out on the road and something happens and they want to make a complaint or state their case, I'll go there and be like, okay, what's going on? And if they say, well, this is what's going on, and if they say they have a legitimate complaint, well, at our department, we have a complaint process. You have to go in, you have to fill out paperwork with the city clerk. Then the city clerk forwards it on to the mayor and to the police chief. Then it's investigated. And it'll either be moved forward or there'll be no standing on the complaint.
You mean to
That's our
tell me
process.
you can't like fire the police officer right then and there? Just
No,
you're
I don't
fired.
have that authority.
I mean, but what if I really want you to?
Well, here's the thing. Like my daddy always told me, want in one hand and do something else in the other and see which one fills up first.
I always like that one. That was one of my favorite lines from Grumpy Old Men.
Yes. The
Birds
thing
of
of it
prey
is,
in there.
in my state, we have what we call a police officer's bill of rights when it comes to citizen complaints.
Well, sure. I mean, because any job, not just police officers, but any job should have some sort of protection because too often I've had people who didn't like the information that I were telling them, right? As a retail store manager, someone would come in and like we would have, for instance, if somebody had a warranty telephone, they needed to do a warranty exchange on,
Mm-hmm.
but the LDR was tripped. It was pink, right? I mean that there was liquid detected.
Means it got wet.
It means it got wet, right?
Yeah.
So we can't. We were like, no, sorry, that voids your warranty. They would get up, so they would, oh, I'm going to call and complain. Okay, you can do that, but we're doing what we're supposed to do. So every place should have some sort of bill of rights, like you say, for their employees. Because if I just want to get somebody fired and all I have to do is complain, there you go.
Yeah, and like Tesla Bit and Radio just asked, always wondered if the complaint has to have the person's name and info listed to get looked into. Well, if we don't know who you are, then how are we supposed to make contact back with you?
Yeah, that whole thing of good citizen. Like, no, you're not. You're not a good citizen.
No. See, with our complaint process, you have to put in your information and you have to come in and fill that information out.
Yeah.
And the way that the officer's Bill of Rights works, that complaint is investigated. And if it is found to have standing and the city government wants to move forward with it, there is a whole process that is spelled out by law that has to be followed. And it has to be followed to the letter. Because you're getting into an area of legality that is spelled out by the legislatures of my state.
So let me ask you a question. How often have you had to go through a serious process like that? Have you had legitimate complaints and illegitimate complaints? What is that? I mean, is that something that happens often, or is it we just know more about it because we deal with First Amendment auditors and sovereign citizens through YouTube?
I think, let me think back. In the last, let's just say 15 years at my department, there has been two.
Just two. That's
Just
it.
two.
1, 2.
1, 2.
My goodness.
That have been actual legitimate complaints that have been investigated.
Wow. Well, there you go.
So what we see on YouTube is, I can kind of compare it to people thinking, okay, real life police work is like CSI. You can solve the case in an hour. That's not how it works.
Right.
What you see on YouTube, people saying, oh, I'm going to file a complaint. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to sue you. Very rarely happens. They're all mouth, no action, because they don't want to follow through with the process. They want to be a Karen. They want something done right now, right then, without justification, without due process. But yet, if the tables are turned,
right,
and they get arrested or charged with something, they want due process.
Oh, absolutely.
So it kind of goes to
but here's the thing. I don't even think they want due process. They say they want due process, but really what they want is just to get away with whatever they want to get away with.
True. It's like one of those things that I want it now. I want it 5 minutes ago, and you're not doing your job and I pay your salary. Well, here's a news flash. If you don't live in my city, then you don't pay my salary, because we are paid by tax base.
And that's the stupidest argument as well, right? Because I pay taxes, it means I pay your salary. So if you actually think about how much money we pay in taxes, like state of Texas doesn't have a state income tax. We just have state sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about, I think it's base sales tax is 6.25 or 7.7. It might be 7.25. And then we pay 1% on top of that for city or for like local municipalities, county and city and whatnot. 8.25% of everything I buy. Now let's say I buy, $100,000 worth of stuff in a year. 8.25% of that goes to paying police officers, all the police officers, and not even 8.25%. That 8.25% goes to the government of the state. And that gets distributed up amongst all the products, the roads, police officers, firefighters, hospital bills. Yeah, exactly. Public works. So when you think about it, I may pay $50 a year towards police officer salary.
Yeah. Well, and then you hear the argument, well, I pay federal taxes and you all get federal money. Please show me where that's at.
Yeah, I mean, even if we did, right? Even if we do pay federal taxes and that money gets trickled down through the whole bureaucracy of how that money gets pushed out. And there are some states and some municipalities and whatnot that do receive federal funding for different things, right? Hell, I can't remember where it was. Alabama, I think it was, that received some federal aid via the military when the military had a surplus of tanks, and they gave them a couple of tanks or sold them a couple of tanks at a ridiculous amount. And not like,
Sign me
a
up.
tank, you know what I mean? Like, it was more like battering ramped. It was retrofitted for different use, but it was small. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't honestly think they needed it. It's like, what the fuck does the police department need a goddamn tank
APCs,
for?
armored personnel carriers,
Right, right.
or stuff for SWAT teams.
See, if it were, and this is what was funny. This is what I remember because it wasn't allocated specifically for SWAT. If it were allocated specifically for SWAT, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. APCs want to bring in a SWAT team for whatever, high.
Yeah, MRAPs.
Right. But no, this is like, no, this is just this precinct's, tank. What do they need
Well,
it for?
I've just got a question. Tesla Bit and Radio says get out of the tank. Can you put me some lights and siren and radios in that?
I mean, I'm sure we could. That would be kind of cool. I mean, look, if somebody came up to me and said, like, hey, here's you a tank. We're not going to charge you for it. You can have it. I'm not going to be like, nah, I'm good. No, I'm taking a tank.
Exactly.
I'm going to ride around in that tank.
Yeah. Or, what was that? Bearcat. A
Right.
lot of SWAT teams use Bearcats.
Yeah.
Stuff like that can be used.
Right.
I've seen a lot of Humvees, especially in areas that have inclement weather.
Yeah.
They use them during inclement weather, serious snow, to get people to warming stations if the power's out. So,
Yeah.
I
mean, look, I understand that there are certain uses for certain things, and you're not going to. You wouldn't catch me in a Humvee. If somebody showed up to save me in a Humvee, I'd be like, nah, I'll catch the next one. We're good. Oh yeah, here's a good question. But don't taxpayers pay out settlements when police do wrong and pay officers defense? I mean, kind of, if you want to think about it that way. But then again, think about all the money that you pay in taxes. Now divvy that up amongst all public works, amongst all places that your tax dollars go to.
well, here, Johnny, what a lot of people don't realize is that most cities or municipalities have insurance.
Right.
That insurance is what covers those type of payouts, not taxpayer funded money. That's what insurance policies are for. Just like when you have insurance on your vehicle.
Right.
If you get in a wreck and you are found at fault at that wreck, your insurance company will pay to settle that claim. Same thing with municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
They have insurance for that reason. That if there is something negligent that has happened and the courts find that that person is at fault and negligence has occurred, that insurance pays that claim.
Right.
It doesn't come out of taxpayer funded money. It doesn't come out of the general fund.
Oh, NSCAT. No. We're not attacking you at all. No, it's an honest question. Absolutely. But that's a question that does get brought up often, or at least a talking point that gets brought up often by frauditors and sovereign citizens and whatnot. These antisocial people that want to bring up, well, I pay salaries and I do this and it's my tax dollars and blah 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 blah. It's kind of funny. We had a conversation about, my wife and I had a conversation earlier about tax dollars and the significance of money. And I think I saw this from an economist. It may have been on the Joe Rogan show. It's probably a clip that I saw of the Joe Rogan show where he's, how much you want to know the significance of $20 billion. And people are like, yeah, $20 billion is a lot of money. So I'm sure it's very significant. And the gentleman said, well, you could end hunger in this country for $20 billion. They said it would be a year, 20 billion a year, and then people are like, holy crap, 20 billion a year. That's a lot of money. And then you'll hear people, the same economist said, well, yeah, but we spend over 170 just in missiles. Every year we're spending that kind of money on missiles. So all you people who are irritated with tax dollars being spent for, whatever this, I pay blues tax, I pay the police officers salaries. It means they have to be my public servant and I'm going to treat them like a slave, but you're not going to get irritated about that.
Well, and Laura's got a good point. She says her municipality has paid out money for civil lawsuits, not all covered by insurance. And that does happen,
Right.
especially in larger cities that have, you know, $1 billion budgets.
Right.
My area, we don't see that. We're a rural community. So we don't see those $1 billion or $1 million budget or multi-million-dollar budget.
You mean you don't walk around with $1 billion in your pocket? Just waiting to hand out cash to people who have a complaint?
I wish.
Because that's what they want. Ultimately, that's what they want. They just want you to give them money right then and there.
And Stevie makes a good point. Police officers also pay taxes just like the rest of us. Yes, I do.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because then people will say, well, you're paying tax. Well, okay, so it's just so stupid. Tax
I pay just as much as everybody else.
Right.
If not more than some.
The whole that whole argument is just stupid, right? It irritates me because you want to go through the screen and kind of like grab these people like, hey guys, maybe you want to think about this argument.
And here's the thing, Roden, their last name makes a good point. If a frauder gets a public defender, I, as a taxpayer, get to tell them how to defend them? No, you don't.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And you don't get to tell me how to do my job either.
Yeah, and just because something was paid for using government funding, right? That doesn't mean that we own that. No. We have HUD housing here in Texas. HUD housing in Texas, HUD housing everywhere, but you have HUD housing that's paid via government grants. Does that mean that I own that house as a taxpayer because I pay taxes? I mean, I can go in there anytime I want? No.
Well,
how that works.
Here's my thing. I see some of these auditors or frauditors or whatever you want to call them. Well, that's my police car. Well, get in and drive off and let me know how that works out for you.
Yeah, let's see how well that goes.
It's not your police car. It's not my police car either. It belongs to my municipality.
Right.
I just get the privilege of using that vehicle to do my job.
Another thing that's commonly misunderstood, a Terry stop. So what exactly is a Terry stop?
So by definition, and I'm just going to use, I like citations, so I'm going to use a citation. I'm using Justia, the U.S. Supreme Court version.
There's nothing wrong with actually citing your sources. We appreciate that.
So it says, under the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, a police officer may stop a suspect on the street and frisk him or her without probable cause to arrest, if the police officer has a reasonable suspicion that the person has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a crime, and has a reasonable belief that the person may be armed or presently dangerous. So where Terry, Ohio comes from is the 1968 ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It was argued on December the 12th, 1967, and decided on June 10th, 1968. Mm-hmm. And if you're not familiar with the story, I highly recommend you look it up. But the gist of it was a detective was on a downtown beat that he had been patrolling for years on end. He observed two strangers on the street corner and saw them walking back and forth along an identical route, pausing to stare in the same store window, which they did for a total of about 24 times. Each completion of the route was followed by a conference between the two on a corner. Mm-hmm. So that's going to raise some red flags.
It's a little
he thought that they were casing the store to maybe do a stick up or a robbery. So he followed them, saw them rejoin a third man several blocks away from the store. The officer approached the three, identified himself as a policeman, and asked their names. The men mumbled something, whereupon the officer spun petitioner around, patted down his outside clothing, and found in his overcoat pocket, but was unable to remove a pistol. The officer ordered the three into the store, removed the petitioner's overcoat, took out a revolver, and ordered three to face the wall with their hands raised. He patted down the outer clothing of the other two, seized a revolver from one of the other ones. He did not put his hands under the outer garments, but during that pat down search, he, thought what he might saw would be a weapon or under petitioner or the other person's outer garments until he felt the guns.
Mm-hmm.
They were taken to the police station, and two people were charged with carrying a concealed weapon. So a lot of people take this out of context. They think a traffic stop is a Terry stop. No, that's a traffic stop.
Right.
And in my 5+ year career, I think I may have done one Terry stop, but I'd received a call of a suspicious person.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I was driving down the road and saw this guy walking down the road and went, oh, well, I'm going to harass this guy.
Right. Yeah.
I actually received a call for service. Somebody called, said, this person doesn't look like they belong here. They're out of place. Something's not right. So it was a suspicious person call. So I basically had a conversation with the guy. I didn't even pat him down, but I had a conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, Terry stop. The only reason that Terry versus Ohio was even brought to the Supreme Court, it wasn't the fact of the officer stopping the guys. It was whether or not it was unreasonable
For him to search.
for him to search
Right.
under the Fourth Amendment. And the Supreme Court found that it was not unreasonable for that reason, because he was able to have a reasonable suspicion based upon the actions of the people
Mm-hmm.
that they may be in the process of committing a crime or about to commit a crime of robbery. So that's where a lot of people get this misconception that anytime somebody stops to talk to you, that it's a Terry stop.
And when we say people, we're talking about one specific person in this context.
I could talk about several different people that I see in this context, but there's one major one that stands out.
Yeah.
In our community.
Yeah, right. And it's no shocker that he gets things wrong because he's an idiot.
Yeah. And Johnny, I've got to say to your audience, I'm not a lawyer. None of this is legal advice.
Right.
If you have questions, I highly suggest that you seek a certified card carrying attorney
Yes.
in your area to answer these questions for you if you have questions. So do not consider any of this legal advice. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm giving my opinion based upon years of experience of being a law enforcement officer. I just have to throw that disclaimer out.
Yeah, well, absolutely, because Sir Little Wolf says erases notes.
Do what?
Sir Little Wolf says erases notes. Yeah.
But a lot of people get Terry versus Ohio mixed up. It's not a stop and frisk issue per se. It is a Fourth Amendment issue of whether or not it is unreasonable.
So I know I can't remember. I don't think this is specific to Texas, but I hear about it a lot here. I heard about it a lot here in Texas in a few different contexts, some in classes and whatnot. But I believe, and this could be other places, but I'm pretty sure here in Texas, like if you even in a traffic stop, if a police officer thinks that you could be anything that's within reasonable reaching distance, the police officer does have the right to say, hey, I would like to see inside of your, like if you have a center console, I would like to see inside of your center console, please. And because he wants to check for a weapon.
Well, and that depends on each state. That's the great thing about the 10th Amendment. They have the right to, create their own laws for each state.
Yeah.
And the biggest part that people get wrong about the Fourth Amendment and they forget this one word. It's called unreasonable.
Unreasonable. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, here's the thing. Anything that is unreasonable to another person of that capacity, so another police officer. So that gets into the realm of, was it unreasonable for me to ask that person to step out of the car?
Right.
Which gets into Pennsylvania versus Mims.
That was going to be my next question.
So when you get into Pennsylvania versus Mims, it was found that, and I'm using just a U.S. Supreme Court again here, so feel free to look it up. It's supreme.justia.com, cases federal/US.
I want to make sure, talking about this little caveat, when you're looking up Justin and like Wikipedia and whatnot, those are good places to start.
Yes.
It should never end there, right? That shouldn't be your finishing place. Like,
No.
whenever I see people who would turn in papers, either research papers or articles for news, when I was the editor of the paper, and according to Wikipedia, it was automatic rejection. Like, no, just no.
At 209, every time I get pulled over, I say I know Blue Bear that I get tased.
That's probably true. It's probably true.
There's a very good possibility of that. But if you get into Pennsylvania versus Mims, and this was decided on December 5th, 1977. It says after police officers had stopped respondent's automobile for being operated with an expired license plate. One of the officers asked respondent to step out of the car and produce his license and registration. After respondent alighted, a large bulge under his jacket was noticed by the officer, who thereupon frisked him and found a loaded revolver. This day and time, you just assume that everybody is armed. And
that's probably the safest thing.
That's the way I've always done my job. I've always assumed that everybody is armed.
I have two arms.
Armed with a weapon. Get your hand away from there, Johnny.
Such a bad joke. I'll put myself in the corner for that one later.
But here's the thing. You can order people to get out of the car, whether you think they're armed and dangerous or not.
Right.
Look at felony stops. Have you ever seen a felony stop where they draw their weapons and say, get out of the car? Use your left hand.
I've never seen.
Use your left hand to open the door from the outside. Put your hands in the air, face away from me, back up, back up, back up. Yeah, that's called a felony stop.
Right.
And that extends to the passenger of the vehicle. And the Supreme Court has found that to be reasonable. So that's where you get into this whole thing of that one person that we were talking about saying, you have to think I'm armed. And no, you're looking at a dissenting opinion of Pennsylvania versus Mims.
Right. And, that's the interesting thing when talking about this constitutional law scholar. To say that he cherry picks is an understatement. And to say that people who subscribe to that train of thought cherry pick is an understatement. They'll find just words and then put those words into a sentence and say, well, that's what this means. When you have decades of legal experts offering opinions on this that are telling you, no, that's not what that means. And that's not me. I'm not a decades legal scholar, right?
And I'm not either.
But actual lawyers who practice and historians, like, no, this is not the context. You have to look at the context of what Pennsylvania versus Mims, Terry versus Ohio, Miranda, you have to look at the context and find out what is and why is. And when you look at these and it's a 5-4 decision, you're going to have a dissenting opinion. But the dissenting opinion is only there so you can understand why these particular justices voted against it.
Well, and look at how many cases have gone before the Supreme Court since 1978 and 1977 on these cases.
Mm-hmm.
There has been numerous cases throughout history that have gone before the Supreme Court. And whether or not certiorari is granted or not is the Supreme Court's decision.
Right.
And there may be people who, there may be some justices of the Supreme Court that say, yes, we agree with this. And there may be some that say, no, we do not agree with this.
Right.
But if they are outvoted the yeses to the nos, that's why we have so many different Supreme Court justices. Because it's not a one or two person decision, it is a panel decision of Supreme Court justices. So that's how that works.
Right. And it's important that it works that way because you don't want to give too few people too much power. I mean, I still think that 7, even 9 Supreme Court justices is still too few people, but I'd rather have 9 than 2 or 3 or 1. So, yeah, I mean,
So NS Cat says I'm an official BS reader meter. Sounds interesting. Come do a ride along with me. Let me show you
I
how
would
the other half
fucking
lives.
love to do a ride along. I had an opportunity once. I didn't get to follow through simply because I think I was drunk that night. So it's probably why I didn't do it. This was years ago. I mean, years
You know,
ago. I was
that
20.
happens in our younger years.
Yeah, I was such a young guy. Now, Cheshire Cat asked a good question earlier. How many sovereign citizens have you dealt with? Or have you dealt with any sovereign citizens?
Honestly, I have been fortunate not to have to deal with any first-hand basis.
Right,
I see a lot of them on here.
right.
I do a lot of research on sovereign citizens. And, you know, if we really want to get back into, oh God, you're in trouble.
Yep. No, I was not drunk last night.
That was the night before last.
Night before last.
You know,
Oh, man.
if you think about it, a whole backstory behind me doing this in my channel was I saw some people that were getting close to my area. I wanted to educate myself on how to handle these people.
Right.
And the more that I went down that rabbit hole, the more I was like, they're saying what? That's not how this works. And then I started going on some panels, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do my own thing.
Right.
I'm going to talk about police chases. I'm going to talk about shooting breakdowns. I'm going to talk about some of these solicits and First Amendment auditors if they gather my attention, and debunk what they're saying, because this is misinformation and it's going to get somebody hurt or killed.
That's the part that I would really like to focus on when talking about the reason why I hit these guys so hard is because it's stupid. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
These like this video, this newer video, I think was from January 17th. I want to say the lady driving in Florida who got pulled over, and I don't have to have a driver's license because I'm not driving. I'm traveling. Like that's not a thing. That's not real. That's not real. And then the whole I'm going to argue with you and not get out of the car and I'm going to give you a hard time and demand a supervisor and tell you better get a supervisor, and all this shit. And the gross misunderstanding and misinterpretation of what the difference between travel and driving. Traveling is a right. Yes, you are correct. Traveling is a right. But traveling does not mean specifically to sit behind an automobile or a personal conveyance or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. That's where the 10th Amendment comes in and gives the states the right to govern themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to operate your land vessel on public roadways, then it has to be licensed, insured, and registered, and you have to have a valid driver's license.
Right.
In a lot of states, including mine, when you sign that and pay for that driver's license, you also sign your name stating that you will give that driver's license to a law enforcement officer upon demand.
Yeah, you don't own that. That's not your property.
No, they give you that to identify yourself as a valid operator of a motor vehicle on public roadways.
Right.
And if a police officer asks for that, you must give it to them if you are operating said land vessel. So,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the whole idea of, well, my personal conveyance, and I have the right to travel, and
yeah, you
tell
have the
me
right to,
anywhere in modern day court cases where they've been like, yeah, that's true. You have the right to travel. You don't have to have a driver's license.
yeah. Here's the thing. If you want to travel, you've got 2 feet.
Right.
You can walk,
Or you can take a bus.
or you can take a train,
Or you
or
can
you
take a
can ride a
train.
bicycle.
Exactly.
You can ride a 49cc moped in most
Right.
states without a driver's license.
Anything under 50 cc's in the state of Texas, you don't need a driver's license.
You know,
You're also not supposed to operate that specifically on freeway and highway, but I don't think you'd want
well,
to.
there's certain restrictions in certain places for that. You're not supposed to walk on a freeway or a highway either.
Exactly.
You can ride horseback. A lot of people in Texas have horses
Not as many people as you think, though,
or
right?
cattle.
Cattle for certain. A lot of
Ride your
cattle.
cow to town.
I count constantly just driving out, and I'll be in the middle of Dallas, and all of a sudden, hey, there's a cow pasture right in the middle of the fucking city. Like, why is this here?
Yeah. But you don't have the right to drive your land vessel or personal conveyance on public roadways without it being registered, licensed, and insured.
Well, okay, so this is what I wanted to talk about with that specific thing because they talk about I have rights, I have rights, I have rights, and blah 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 blah. But you know what? So do I. I have rights too. And as a tax-paying citizen and somebody who participates in the social experiment of community, I demand that you demonstrate that you are physically, mentally capable of operating your vehicle. If you can't, then I don't believe you should be driving that vehicle. And I'm
And
not the
there's
only person who believes that. I'm
and
not the
there's
only
still
person who
some
believes that.
that have a driver's license that you wonder if they should be driving a vehicle.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's. I think it's Arizona that they give pretty much. They pretty much give lifetime driver's license, which to me, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can understand that. I had a customer come in a couple of years ago, startup service, and gave her Arizona driver's license, and it expired when she was like, I think the expiration date was something like 2075. I was like, what?
I've never seen that one, but that is interesting.
That I was crazy, and I looked it up, and because I was like, man, this has got to be fake. It's got to be fake ID. So I looked it up, and like, no, for sure,
So,
shit.
Facty wants to know if I've ever had to smash out a window.
How not if you ever have. How many windows have you smashed out? Let's be honest, because that's what you guys do. That's what you Tridents do. You run around smashing people's windows, either their car windows or the windows of their shanties under the bridge.
Honestly, I don't think I ever have.
And, that's the thing. It's not. People think because I've seen it on TV or I see it on YouTube video or whatever that it happens so often. I've spoken to, I mean, a relative sample size of police officers who've never fired their service weapon, who've never been involved in high speed chase, who've never smashed out a window, whose biggest collar was somebody who was wanted on a bench warrant.
Johnny, I've been doing this for a while and I've never had to discharge my firearm at another human being. And I hope I never do.
Now, most officers, I say most officers, but I would like to believe that most officers think that I don't want to have to shoot anybody today. I'm sure there are some out there who are all gung ho and ready to do I'm going to be Bruce Willis in Die Hard today. But
Well,
most police officers are they like, dude, I just want to get up, go to work, do my job. I want to drive around and be bored all day, and then go home to my wife and kids,
exactly.
or my husband and kids. Don't want to be
Your significant other and children.
right.
I hope that I never have to discharge my firearm at another human being in my lifetime. But I am mentally prepared to do that if I have to.
Right.
It's
Which is
one
not
of
a
those
fun
things.
position to be in. You know what I mean?
No, it's not.
I can imagine that being the worst. Just, I can't even imagine putting myself in that situation. Like, yeah, that's No thanks.
Well, think of it this way: the law enforcement profession is the only profession in the world that you can be justified in taking another life. That is the responsibility laid upon our shoulders.
Right. And it's not a responsibility that should be taken lightly. Absolutely not. And
You know, and that's something that I take very serious.
right.
I'm given that authority to take another life in the line of duty and be justified in doing so. You know, that's not a fun thing to carry around with you. You must be getting the eye.
I am. I'm getting the eye. It's basically telling me that I'm in trouble later.
But ask her if it comes with a sandwich.
I will not be asking that question right now. No questions.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Mwah.
Love you.
Love you.
Good night, boss lady.
Blue Bear says good night, boss lady.
Good night.
She says good night. No, I think it's the you better be cleaning up thing.
You better clean up your mess before you come to bed thing.
I already cleaned up my mess. I have to whisper because she's still in earshot.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
You know, but the thing of it is, yeah, there's probably some that are all gung ho and
I mean, look, there are bad police officers. Okay.
oh, there's no doubt, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to sit here and say that there's not. There are bad police officers. I mean, look at the 5 guys in Memphis.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
Look at the police officer in Minnesota.
yeah,
You know,
I
the
mean-
Eric Garner situation that should never have happened. The the guy selling CDs that never should have happened. The other situation in New York never should have happened. You know, pinning
Yeah.
somebody down by his neck until he's dead. Well, he died because of a drug overdose. Pretty sure the knee to the back of his neck didn't help that
are
situation.
you talking about Chauvin?
Yes.
Yeah, I watched. I kept my opinion to myself until I saw several different angles of that video
Yeah.
and several different videos before I formed my own personal opinion on that situation. And that was effed up from the get go. I think there's more to that situation than what any of us will ever know.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure there was. And you know, trying
and
to
like-
be an objective looker of that, right? Understanding that, you know, potentially that officer could have been in fear of his life with all the people around filming and whatnot. I can understand that mindset. I can understand that excuse, but there's still no reason why when the other officers arrived on scene after they saw that the situation was already, you know, the guy was already detained. I mean, he was cuffed.
Well, and here's my question about that. They had him in the car and then pulled him back out of the car.
Yeah, why did that happen?
Why?
That makes no sense to me.
You know, and like Stevie said, there was more than 5 people in Memphis. Yeah, there was, but I'm
Right.
talking about the initial 5.
Right.
Now there have been others that have been suspended, that have lost their jobs, that even firefighters that have been suspended and lost their jobs. I've been kind of following this whole situation, but I'm talking about the initial 5 that initiated that traffic stop and the initial 5 that caught him at the other location.
Right.
Those guys do not deserve to wear the badge. And the ones that stood around and watched it do not deserve to wear the badge, in my opinion. You know, they should have stopped it. And that's the reason that they either got suspended or terminated. Which rightfully so.
Exactly. And you know, I would like to see more of a spectacle made when that shit happens, right? Simply because we need to drown out or at least match the level of that same level of the Anton Sterlings, of the Eric Gardners, of the when these police officers completely fuck up. We need to be like, no, look, the guy who shot Philander Castile, not only should he not be wearing a badge, but he should be in prison. And this is an opinion. This is an opinion.
I'm trying to think which one that was.
So the Philander Castile one was the guy who was in the passenger seat, was pulled over and followed Minnesota state law, had a concealed and carry, and had a concealed firearm on him. Followed the law, right? The law says if you are stopped by LEO, you must identify yourself as a concealed carry, and if you have a firearm, identify that you have a firearm. He did everything he was supposed to do. And, this goes in the face of those people who say, well, if you just comply, you're going to be fine. He did everything he was supposed to do. Kept his hands where he could see him. Officer approached him and said, hey, I need your ID, even though he wasn't driving. He was a passenger. I need your ID. Officer, I am a concealed and carry. I have a concealed and carry license, and I do have a firearm in the car. And the officer demanded to see his license. So he went to grab his license from his back pocket, and the officer opened fire and shot him. Now, mind you, in direct line of this police officer, behind in the...
Is that the one where there's a juvenile in the back seat?
There was a 4-year-old child in the back seat. And direct, like, if
In
we
the direct
remove...
line of fire.
Right, if we remove Castile, that little girl's getting shot.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, absolutely not.
And that makes me want to question that officer's ability to do the job.
Now, they say, well, he fit the description of a suspect who just performed an armed robbery or some shit. That was his excuse.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. In my opinion, and this is my opinion only, how I would have handled that situation. As soon as he'd have said, I'm a concealed carry holder and I do have a firearm in the vehicle, my next question would have been, where's it at?
Exactly.
Well, it's on my right hip. Well, do me a favor, put your hands on the window sill. I'm going to have you step out of the vehicle. I'm going to secure your weapon. And then we're going to carry this conversation further.
Yeah, we're going to continue on.
And
Absolutely.
depending upon the training and experience of this officer, how long they've been on the job, there's a lot of variables. And without actually interviewing that officer and getting all sides of the story, with basically what you've just told me, I've got questions.
Yeah, I have questions as well. And this is not someone who had any recent priors that I'm aware of. I don't know if he had any priors at all. I don't remember him having priors. He worked in the lunchroom at the school. He was well liked by everybody who, all the kids, the staff. He was an upstanding citizen. He did everything right. He did everything that we tell people. Well, if you just comply, boom, there you are.
In fact, he says more training, more training, more training. Sometimes it is a retraining issue. Sometimes it's just an issue of that said person or that said officer does not have the ability to do the job.
Yeah, here's one thing. Let me read these super chats really quick, and then
Okay, go ahead.
So NANA for $6.66 says, "Is Johnny O getting a spanking later? Probably not the kind of spanking you're talking about." And then Commander Darklight for 10 Aussie says, "At NANA, only if he's good." I'm not good. I haven't been good.
Yeah, I'm gonna press X to doubt on it being the one that you like.
Yeah, if anything, it's not with the studded paddle; it's with the spiked paddle. And I'm just kidding, folks. There's no abuse that goes on in this house. Being a police officer is one of the most... It's a job that you can do everything correct and still end up dead.
Or in prison.
Or in prison, right? As a police officer, right? You can follow all your training to the T. You can, whatever, everything. You can do everything right and still end up dead. And people try and use that as well. Doesn't that mean that because of the inherent risks, they're allowed a little latitude? To which I have to say, no, you're not allowed any latitude when you hold that responsibility of justifiable lethal force.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not allowed any latitude.
Now, Johnny, blink twice if you're in danger.
Yeah, yeah. I already gave you the blinking that you were looking for, Commander Darklight.
That was more of a wink.
Well, that was SOS, but And so Robert says every human is capable of error. I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, we are. Yes, we are capable of error, and sometimes, like, here's the thing: I'm capable of error as well. And in the state of Texas, like other states, we have a stand your ground.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if law, rule, whatever it's called. We have stand your ground here in the state of Texas. But if I'm in my house and somebody comes and breaks into my house and I have a firearm and I let this person have it, yet they're running away, even though that's a mistake, I'm not supposed to shoot them in the back because that tells, if they're running away from me, then the imminent danger is no longer there. They are leaving. They are trying to end the imminent danger, imminent threat. That's a mistake. I'll get charged for, I don't know if it's going to be manslaughter, second degree murder, whatever. I'll get charged. I'll go on trial. So the Castle Doctrine says Andrew Revere. That's correct. Castle Doctrine.
Well, here's the thing, Johnny. When they're coming in the house, you make sure that they don't leave.
Well, here's the thing. If they come in the house, I want them to. I want them out. Right. I want them gone. At the end of the day, if I got my kids here, I don't want. I would hate to have to discharge a firearm with my children around in the house.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody wants to, but here's the thing. If somebody comes in my house with the intent to hurt me or my family,
right,
all bets are off.
Oh no, absolutely. If the guy's coming in and they're not, you done stepped into the wrong house.
He's not going to leave vertical, or
right.
She, whoever. They're not going to leave vertical.
And it's also important to note that the odds of that happening are so scarce. Most people who break into your house don't want you there when they do it.
Oh no,
they want to get in, get their shit, and get out.
Mm-hmm.
A buddy of mine was at work one day and his girlfriend called him freaking out because somebody they had one car and she was there with, I think with their child, who, baby, less than a year, between a year and 18 months. And she called him freaking out. Hey, somebody just started breaking the house. This burglar was coming in the window, saw her and the kid and had this look, oh shit, I done fucked up, and then took right the fuck off.
Yeah, they bounced in a hurry.
They don't want to be seen. Burglars don't want to be seen.
Stevie's got a question that says, do they have to step in your house to defend yourself? It depends on your state.
Yeah, it depends. Like in Florida, apparently you can stalk somebody in Florida. You can stalk somebody to their house and then claim stand your ground and get off. Yes, I'm talking about the Zimmerman case. I think that was total bullshit. Follow me to my house and then claim stand your ground as you're following me to my house after being told not to, or I guess 911 dispatch can't tell you that. They could suggest, don't do that. That's not a good idea. Yeah.
Well, all I have to say is if somebody decides to break in my house, they better stand in the yard and get right with whatever God that they serve or Buddha or whoever they think is their higher power, because I'm going to introduce them.
Yeah.
As sad as that is to say, you come in my house and threaten me or my family or my children, I'm going to let you meet your maker.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for
you.
You might take me out, but I'm going to take a piece of you with me.
Well, it's like I tell everybody, I'm not the best fighter in the world, and I've had my ass kicked many a day. But I guarantee you one thing, you'll know I was there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to leave my mark.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
But anyway, so the whole point of this was talking about making mistakes, right? When people
well,
make
yeah,
mistakes outside of LEO, when I make a mistake, I'm held accountable for it. And I absolutely believe that law enforcement officers, when they make that type of mistake, talking about the Philandro Castile type of mistake, they need to be held they need to be held accountable. And not just, well, we're going to fire you from your job. Like, no, if I do that shit, I'm not just getting fired from my job. I'm probably going to prison for some time. God forbid the person that I shoot be a police officer. Because that's a fucking that's the fast lane to the chair here. Well, I don't think we do chair in Texas, but the fast lane to death row here in Texas. Like we've got an express lane.
oh, absolutely, you do in Texas.
That's insane. It's crazy. But
Well, here's also the thing that I want to point out as a Leo, as a law enforcement officer. When these shootings happen, these officer involved shootings happen, these officers have milliseconds to make a decision.
sure, absolutely.
And the shoot team, the prosecutor, whatever you want to call them, the people that review the shooting have months upon months upon months upon months to dissect the situation.
Right.
Now, everybody's human. People make mistakes. And I'm not going to say they don't. When you're put in a high stress situation and you have to make a split second decision, you may make the wrong one.
Sure.
And it's happened.
Absolutely.
What is the saying? To err is human.
Right.
We have that pressure to make that decision in a blink of an eye.
Right.
And that's where muscle memory training all kicks in.
Right. So that's kind of the point that I was getting to. The whole holding people accountable, and I acknowledge that it's a dangerous job. That again, I acknowledge that you right now, once you get off this call here, off this live stream here, you go to bed, you wake up tomorrow, you can go to work, do everything exactly correct, and still end up on the front page.
Oh, absolutely.
But my argument against that being used as a viable excuse for a mistake, or a viable excuse for the reason why some may have an itchy trigger finger, or some might, whatever, is it's not like that part of the job isn't known. It's not like when they're telling you about, when they're teaching you firearm safety, or when they're going through the training, that they don't tell you this is life or death. When you pull your service pistol, you are pulling it to kill somebody.
Well, no, you're pulling it to eliminate the threat.
Well, okay.
We are not trained to kill.
You're eliminate the threat, but here's the thing: every firearms course that I've ever taken said if you pull the trigger, you are pulling the trigger to eliminate a threat, i.e., kill the motherfucker.
Well,
You
once
have to be prepared to do that.
Yeah, once you squeeze that trigger, there's no pulling that bullet back out of that gun.
Right.
When it leaves that barrel, there's no pulling it back. And Stevie asked a question: do you think that officers are under more stress on stops and calls because most officers work alone now? I work alone. So I use as the utmost caution that I can, and try not to be complacent, because complacency is what gets you killed.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of stress in our job, because if you think about it, what were you just saying? I can do everything right and still end up on the front page of the newspaper. So yeah, there's a lot of stress with the job, and not everybody's cut out to do this job.
Exactly.
There's been a lot of people that I've seen come in and say, oh, I want to do this job. And then they realize, yeah, this is not for me. I'm second generation law enforcement. I grew up with this.
Right.
Now, I started in law enforcement and I went away from it for a long time and came back to it. Ed, that's between you and Johnny.
You're supposed to say no, Blue Bear. Dang it.
That's between you and him. I ain't getting in that fight. I'm out.
See, that's the typical tyrant. Sorry, typical Trident of you.
But you know, it is a very stressful job, and at the end of the day, you know, every morning when I leave or every evening when I leave, every time I leave for work, I look at my wife and tell her that I love her.
Yeah.
You know, she looks at me and tells me she loves me and tells me to be careful because there's always
I
that
think you
chance that I
misunder-
may not come home.
I think you misunderstood what she said. She said she doesn't say I love you. She says I love it when you leave. I'm kidding, of course. I'm kidding. I'm just teasing.
I know you are. But it's one of those things that when I walk out that door, there's the possibility that I may not come home.
Right.
Or the possibility that I may not come home for a couple of weeks because I've been shot or ran over or stabbed or
Any number of things. Any
ambushed.
number of things. Right.
You know, the things are endless that can happen.
Absolutely. So when I worked at the pool hall, we had a customer who was a retired DEA agent, and he was recounting a story that happened not too far from where we are right now. He and his partner were out and about, and they came across some gathering on a lake, right? And they're like, let's check this out. And he looked over at his partner and said, hey, let's not fuck with these guys too much. Let's just see, make sure everybody's cool, and then, we'll bounce. But let's not fuck with them very much. So his partner said, yeah, that's cool. We, agreed. Because they realized that they were way outnumbered and there was a lot of people there and it was probably something super shady, but there was only two of them. So they get there, they get out, hey, everybody cool, no car trouble, nothing. Yeah. All right, guys, just, we have ordinance here. You got to shut her down after 10:30 or 11 o'clock, whatever the fuck time it was. Just letting you know, have a good night. And they take off. Well, a couple of weeks later, he runs into one of his informants, and his informant is like, look, the second you guys got out of that car, you had two shotguns pointed at your back. It's a good thing you didn't fuck with them because you weren't going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, well, fuck. So that's how close that shit can happen, just like that, so quick.
Yep. Because you never know who you're dealing with.
Right. That shit's scary. It's just dangerous.
You know, you could be talking to somebody that's wanted for serial murder and never know it.
Right.
There's been plenty of officers that have been ambushed.
Oh, for certain. Now we talk about all the the negative things and whatnot. There's obviously there's an issue. There's a disparity between inner city police departments specifically. That's starting to kind of creep out a little more rural and even some of the urban or suburban developments and whatnot. But inner city, you see it a lot. Now, I want to say it was in Oakland that there was a police chief who took over some department in Oakland and noticed that there was huge distrust amongst police officers and the people they were supposed to be serving and protecting. And he realized that there was a huge hurdle between it. Like the distrust was causing a lot of problems. So he reached out to local community members and organized different events and different meetups and actually got his people retrained, of course, and had his people and the population. They all kind of got together and started getting to know each other, started talking with each other, started dealing with each other, started putting names and faces to the people who enforced the laws that were around. And he really wanted to improve the relations between police officers and civilians. And he took a lot of shit for it for a while, but then people started noticing this is an inner city that had not a huge crime problem, but it had a crime problem.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to help reduce it. He was able to increase officer safety because now it wasn't just some pig. It was, oh, that's Officer Johnson or that's Officer Smith or that's Officer whatever. Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, that's Ronnie. He plays basketball down at the street corners with whatever. They started to get to know each other. They knew who each other were. And they started to build that trust again. And this police chief held his officers to a very strict standard. It's like, we're not going to make mistakes. And if we do, we're going to come down hard on those. And we're going to let the public see that. Why can't we
Well,
do that everywhere?
here's the thing. That's called community policing.
Right.
I'm a big proponent of community policing. Um, I get out in my community. I talk to people. If I see people out in their yard working, I'll get out of my car and have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
One, to get to know those people, and two, to let them get to know me. Because if something goes on, I want them to call me and say, hey, this is going on. I don't think it's right. Can you look into it?
Right.
So it's one of those things that, especially in the inner cities that have high crime rates, if you get out and get into the community, build that trust with the community leaders in that community, and they'll let everybody know, hey, you know, Officer Bluebear, Sergeant Bluebear, he's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's here to help us. He's not here to just take us to jail
Right.
when we mess up. He's actually here to help. It's one of those things that you have to build that community trust.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, if we had more, and I know there's a lot of people who speak out against it, who are against this, but we had more empathy in the police departments, more willingness to mix it up with folks. Like, is it Shaq? He's a deputy sheriff or some shit like that in
Yeah,
Florida.
he's a deputy sheriff in Florida.
And he'll go out into the inner city and play basketball with the kids in his uniform. He'll go out and interact. He uses his celebrity and uses his badge to
Mm-hmm.
try and help make things better. But that's just one person. If we could somehow infect police officers all over the place, and some of the community members that are very anti-police, and I can understand why they would be. I can understand, again, we're talking about the trust. If we could just get that to infect everywhere, that positive interaction, having hey, we're gonna do block barbecue, everybody come out, we'll do our thing.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of places do what they call community night out.
Right.
I've seen that in a lot of places. And, Logan has a good point. Community oriented policing has taken a backseat since 9/11.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that. I try to do more of it in my area, especially in the summertime when people are out, the days are longer. You can get out and have those conversations or get out and play basketball with the kids. There's a couple of special needs children in my community.
Mm-hmm.
I get out and talk to them, have conversations with them, spend time with them playing ball or just hanging out, for the simple fact that if something was to happen and they see me, they know, oh, I can trust him. He's going to keep me safe.
Yeah, he's not coming here just to crack my skull or
Yeah.
take me to jail or whatever.
I've built that rapport with them. So every time I see them, even when I'm not in uniform, they recognize me and they wave at me.
Right. And we need that. I mean, just in general, even if we didn't have an issue with distrust, we need that as a civilian. When I see police officers get out and actively participate in a positive way with the community, that's something I want to see all day, every day. All day, every day. Now, I understand we have to have, traffic cops out there to make sure people aren't speeding, because that's a dangerous thing that gets people killed. I understand we need to make sure that, there has to be investigations. I understand there is a more serious side to being a police officer, and I get that, and I accept that. I would just like to see the more fun side, come out and, hey, look, I'm a human being too. I like football. I like this team, or I like comic books, or however you have to, whatever you have to do to be able to connect with the people whom you work with in the community. I think that would be an amazing thing that would really just revolutionize
And
inner city relations with police officers.
the
And
biggest thing
everywhere.
about that, Johnny, is a lot of police departments, especially after the last couple of years, have become more reactive than proactive.
Right.
And
And I do think that we ask way too much of our police officers. I do think
with the defund the police movement, we are hurting for officers on the street. We used to get 100 applications for one job. Now we're lucky to get two.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to do this job.
and that's kind of what Phil says here. Cops and teachers are the only two jobs everybody love to criticize, claim they know more about more than the professionals, but nobody wants to actually do. And yeah, I can. That's for 9.99. Thank you for that super chat. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of critics out there, and I am a critic, right? I'm a critic of what I consider to be bad behavior. I'm not going to be a cop. That's just I don't want that responsibility. I just don't. I know it's not for me. But yeah, it's something that we need to figure out. We need to put this shit together. We need to. There's got to be more than just, well, if they don't like it too fucking bad, or that they're just pigs. We got to get away from that. We've got to get some more positive interactions. And when you have instigators, one of the reasons I really can't stand what people like Chili do, the whole instigation thing. You're going after to cause a problem. That's not going to solve anything. Yelling
Well,
and screaming at a police officer, calling him a tyrant and a pig and all this, that's not going to solve any problems.
yeah. What was it I saw here? Yeah, that's the one I was looking at.
So Fred Edmonds says, should there be a national database of police officers that grade their performance?
Well, here's the thing. That was actually brought up in a bill in Congress. And I don't believe it passed. I think it was shut down. And I agree with some of the legislatures that said that should be left up to the states and not a national database. And here's my reason behind this. The states do have those. There are some states, mine being one of them, that has a list of officers that are pretty much blackballed and can never be an officer again. Due to negligence or bad behavior or other reasons. A national database it'd be like a national database for gun ownership. It would be so out of control that there would be too many people fall through the cracks. I think that should be left up to the individual state and let that be regulated by the state. Because if you take 50 smaller groups and have 50 different people doing those smaller groups versus one person doing the entire group, it's going to be easier to track it and less people are going to fall through the cracks.
Well, even still, I think even if you do leave it up to the states, there should be something that, because like people talk about, there's some people bring up some interesting points that being able to travel. Well, if I'm a bad cop in the state of, let's say some podunk state like Nebraska, not that Nebraska's a podunk state, but it's a flyover state, not a whole lot of population, or Wyoming or some shit like that. And I'm a cop out there and I get fired for being a bad cop. I'm probably, even if with that state having, let's say the states do that, there's a registry for the state only. Well, and I go to Texas, I'm probably more likely to slip through those cracks because.
Well, here's the thing. You know what I'm seeing more of every day? I'm getting requests from other agencies when they're doing their background investigations on new applicants of this person is applying for a job at this agency. They've lived in this area. What information, or if any, do you have on this person? I've seen that from numerous states. Got one the other day just from Arizona.
Right.
And
but would it be easier if there were, even if it were fed by the states making their own whatever, right? Would it be easier if they fed that stuff to a national database where I'm in Texas, let's say you're in California. That's not where he's at. I don't know where he's at. It could be in Alaska for all I know. He is a bear and he is blue, and it's cold in Alaska, so I think that's where he might be from. So go look for him. All you frauditors in Alaska. But okay, so, I'm in Texas, you're in California, and I fire a bad police officer, and I put that in the, this is the reason why I fired. He was fired for gross negligence, reckless endangerment, whatever the fuck it is, right? Whatever it is, he stole money from evidence, whatever, right? And it's not like I can just, well, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it is police officers. Maybe they can call up and just say, "Hey, why was he fired?" And no HR process that you have to go through.
Well, here's the thing though, with the way that some of the laws are when they call and say, what about this person? By law, we can only say, well, they're eligible to be rehired or not eligible to be rehired.
Right.
You know, that is one of those things. I wouldn't be opposed to sharing information on blacklisted people on a one-on-one basis, but a national database, I would have to I would have to see a lot more other than just saying
I mean,
it's a
obviously,
national database.
right. Obviously, it wouldn't be something that just any old Joe Blow can pull up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There would have to be some security involved. But I think that would be easier, right? So if you have your designated HR reps, and they're the ones that have the access to it, they can check this shit out and look at the file. Like, no, we don't need to hire this guy because, you know,
Well, and if you look at Ed 209's comment, he's asking how many people are in my department. It's a very small department. I'll just say that. So we don't have HR. We don't have all that stuff.
right,
The supervisors handle that. The chief handles that. So, and then if you want to highlight Violet Butterfly,
yeah. Well, I wanted to say Unchained America says there's a national database of disbarred officers. It's called the Brady List. I didn't know that.
I didn't even know that.
Violet Butterfly says, I have a question for you, Blue Bear. Years ago, when we lived in North Carolina, I was stopped on my way home because my car looked like the one they were looking for is at a Terry stop. Just curious.
I wouldn't call that a Terry stop. I would call that an investigative stop, because if they were attempting to locate a vehicle that is similar to yours, that's an investigative stop, not a Terry stop, because they are looking for a specific type of vehicle, color, make, model. And it just so happened that yours was something very similar to what they were looking for. You know, they may just have seen your vehicle and it looked similar, and they wanted to make sure that you were not the person that they were looking for. It's a minor inconvenience, and the Supreme Court has ruled that it's not unreasonable, you know, on situations like that before.
Right.
He said, I showed him my DO. He asked me where I was headed. He checked it out, found out I wasn't the person they were looking for. I was on my way. It took about 5 minutes. So, you know, no harm, no foul. It was a minor inconvenience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I'm on the fence on. But younger, I was very much, I was very vocal and angry about when shit like that would happen. When like the whatever bad, the bad publicity that police officers received, and very harsh. And I'm still extremely harsh on those who fuck up. Right. I keep going back to Philando Castile because that's just the best, in this case, worst scenario, an example of what I'm talking about. And you know, now I've softened my approach. I was never like a cop hater. Never was a cop hater, but there's definitely some distrust.
Well, and it depends on your interactions that you had in your younger
Exactly.
years.
Right. Exactly what I was going to say. It depends on the interactions I had, you know.
And it depends on how those interactions went, how that person approached you,
right.
or how that officer approached you, what the situation was. There's a lot of different variables.
Right.
I try to treat everyone with the same respect that I ask them to give to me.
Right.
You know, when I walk up to the vehicle, I explain to them who I am, why I stopped them, and then give them the opportunity to respond.
Right. And you know, my father, living where he lived in Los Angeles, growing up in LA, in the side of town that he grew up on, being Mexican American, having a Mexican American, you know,
Mm-hmm.
parents and whatnot, during the fifties and sixties. Obviously, there were huge. You know, they were on the heels of the Zoot Suit riots and the budding gang problems that arose from that time period and whatnot. And police were, I mean, basically stopping. Like my father said, yeah, it wasn't nothing for me to get stopped by the police on my way to work. Hell, I
And
remember I remember being there, and you know, looking at me. My obviously my mother is white, but my younger brother, especially when he was like sub 10, was blonde headed and blue eyed, and
mhm.
we're in the middle of East Los Angeles, and he sticks out like a sore thumb. But my grandfather didn't give a shit about any of that. He was grandson, wanted to, you know, he wanted to take him and go to the barbershop and show his grandson off to all of his friends at the barbershop. And my grandfather at the time, he was the kind of person, I'm gonna fucking do what I want, and I'm just gonna do it. So he picked him up, started to walk, go to the barbershop. My father was after him pretty quick because my father kind of like, you know what, we might want to, just in case. And sure as shit, my grandfather got stopped, and the police officers were, where'd you get this baby? And my grandpa was like, this is my grandson. I was like, no, that white child, that's a white child. It's not your grandson. It was the whole deal. My father had like, no, that's my son. And, you know, here's a picture and this is my father. And it was an ordeal. So
And
there's that distrust from that stems from that, not that specific incident, but that familial connection with police
well,
officers.
and I'll be the first to admit to you, Johnny, in LA during that time, there was a lot of racial profiling going on by the police.
Well, it
Um,
still is to this day.
and there may be. I've been out west a couple, once. I've not really got to experience the downtown LA scene, which most people live, running around in Compton and some of the inner city of LA. When I was there, I was on vacation, so I went to some of the other spots, Beverly Hills, Hollywood, um, some of the touristy spots. So there may still be going on today. I hope it's not. I hope that has diminished quite a bit in the last century, or the last decade or so. Not century, but decade. Um, I think it's getting better. Is it still 100%? Absolutely not.
Right.
Um, will we ever see 100%? You and I probably not in our lifetime.
No.
Um, but I think it's getting better.
It it's going to take a huge concentrated effort. Sorry, I took a sip of water and went down the wrong pipe. It's going to take a huge concentrated effort on a lot of people's parts, but that effort is going to have to be made more so by police officers than community. It's just the way it is. Like when you're talking about a power dynamic,
Yeah.
it
It
you
just
know
depends on what part of the country you're in.
sure.
Um, like in my part of the country, I feel like that it's getting a lot better than what it used to be. Um, is it still 100%? No.
Right.
But I believe that I truly believe that it's getting better.
Yeah, I mean
And I can tell you a story, if you want me to share that.
sure, absolutely.
So right after there was a situation with law enforcement. I think it was during the hands up, don't shoot
Mm-hmm.
part of the defund the police movement.
Mm-hmm.
There was a gentleman of color that forgot to dim his headlights, and I did a traffic stop, and I could literally see him shaking. He was so scared,
Yeah.
and I just looked at him and I said, "Sir," and that's how I addressed him. I addressed him as "Sir." I said, "You forgot to dim your headlights. It's not a big deal. Let me see your driver's license, your registration, and your insurance. Let me make sure everything is good, and you'll be on your way." I said, the goal here tonight is for you to go home safe and for me to go home safe.
Right, right.
So there's no reason to be in fear. And that kind of really affected me because this gentleman was scared to death because he saw the uniform, not the person.
Right.
You know, I'm pretty fair with everybody I deal with. You have to talk me into writing you a ticket.
Oh, I knew a police officer who hated writing citations. He was I met him when I was in high school. He was the security guard, or he not security guard. He was a police officer that ran security for the basketball games. He would call me Brick, and I would call him Pig. It was all in jest, right?
Yeah.
He didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of it. And we had, a familial, not a familiar type back and forth, and it was mutual respect, right? Well, I just happened to catch him at a 7-Eleven right next to the job that I had at the time after high school. It was a couple of years after high school. I went to the 7-Eleven to grab a drink, and he was there writing somebody a ticket. I'm like, what the fuck did this guy do to make him write a ticket? Well, after it turned out, I said, Officer Pig, why are you writing tickets? I thought you hated that shit. He's like, I do. I fucking hate writing tickets. But the guy got out of his car in front of a gas station and left his car running. And I told him, you can't do that. You need to turn your car off. And he wanted to argue with me about it. And the 7E employee was like, yeah, he was out there just arguing. And the officer gave him like 10 different opportunities. Like, chill, man. Just chill. Relax. And sure as shit, is like, no, you can't give me a ticket. So the officer was like, okay, well, yes, I can. And here's your ticket.
Mm-hmm. And that gets into the whole thing of don't try to argue your case on the side of the road. That's what the courts are for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And here's the thing. The guy wasn't going to get a ticket if he would have just turned his car off.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been like, cool, we're good. And then, boom, that's it.
Yep.
He didn't even stop him. He just happened to be pulling up to the same 7E. He was, you know what I mean?
And he was just probably like, hey, man, you can't leave your car running.
leave
Do
your
me
car
a favor,
running.
turn it off.
Right. That's it. And the guy wanted to argue with him. But you can't
Yeah.
write me a ticket. You can't write. Oh, yes, I can. And here we go. So TK Telemax says, Johnny O and Blue Bear, what about all the false police reports that cops fill out to cover up their criminal acts and the higher ups signing off on those reports? I'm not going to say that doesn't happen because obviously it has happened in the past. Is it something that happens? Is it rampant? I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't have that kind of time to audit every single police station. I'm not trying to be funny. I just want to try to put a serious type point in this thing here. I don't know how. I don't know how much of a problem it is. I do know that it has happened. But yeah, Blue Bear, what do you have to say about that?
I'd say it's probably happened. In my department, it doesn't happen. Because if I find out somebody is falsifying a report, they're going to get the wrath of hell. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that they're no longer an officer because I am the supervisor. I will not tolerate that in my department.
Mm-hmm.
Now for other departments, I can't speak for them. For bigger departments, metropolitan area departments that have multiple divisions and multiple supervisors and multiple different sections. Could that happen? Has it happened in the past? Yeah. It just gets to the point where the good ones have to stand up and say no more.
Right. Yeah. Now there is like the stigma that if you speak out against a police officer that you're going to turn yourself into a pariah amongst other police officers. And again, speaking from your position or from your precinct, do you see that as an issue? Or is that something that has been like dramatized in Hollywood?
No, I've seen it. The word Blue Falcon comes to mind. I've seen it happen.
Mm-hmm.
and that's the term that's used is Blue Falcon. Um, but here's the thing: right's right and wrong's wrong, in my opinion. And if I know something that's being done that is wrong, and I can correct that wrong, then I'm going to do so because that way I can go home and sleep at night and know that I've done the right thing. You know, that's between me and my maker.
Right.
So I have to do what I have to do on my end, one as a supervisor and as a senior officer. If the young ones screw up, then it's a thing of, okay, this is what you should have done. This is how you handle this situation in the future. Is it a retraining issue? I'm a firm believer in second chances. To a degree.
Right.
You know, if somebody makes a mistake on a report, hey, you need to correct this. This is not what happened. You need to fix this. You need to own it. If you screw up, then you need to own it, learn from it, and move forward. Now, some screw ups are a little more serious than just missing something or misquoting something on a report.
Right.
There's situations that sometimes you can't come back from. And I've seen it happen.
I just had 2 new plot hole crew members, Freight Edges and Cheshire Cat. Thank you so much. I wanted to get that out there before I got to this last point. We're going to talk about this last comment, and I think we're going to call it a night. I'm sure it's late over there for you because it's getting late over here for me as well. And I still have
I'm good to go anytime, brother. You know how that goes.
Right. TK Telemac also says, what about letting cops retire before instead of firing the cop?
You know, that is a really good question. I've not been put in that situation to where I've had to bring that to a head on somebody. So I really can't speak to that personally. Have I seen or heard? Well, I've not really seen it. I've heard about it in the past. So it's one of those things that would be above my pay grade where I'm at. That would be more of a city chief of police decision.
Right. Now, obviously, if you saw something that you thought was wrong,
Oh, if I saw something that I thought was wrong, I'd bring it to my supervisor's attention and be like, look, this is what I know. Now, what they do with that is above my, above my ability or above my pay grade per se. But I would let, my supervisor know, hey,
Right.
this is what I saw. This is what I heard. This is what happened. Now you can take that for what you will and do what you want with it. And that only involves on their character, not mine.
Right. Cheshire Cat says gifted memberships cost more than standard. I don't think so. I don't know because I don't control that. From what I understood, it like if it's let's say you wanted to gift 5 of the crew memberships, but I think I have those at like $1.99 or $2 or some shit like that. So it should only be whatever the price of the gifted membership is times however many you want to gift out. At least that's what it was told to me from YouTube. So yeah, not for sure.
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure all that out.
Ed 209 says, I've seen Beverly Hills Cop. Blue Bear doesn't know anything.
Keep watching the films. And that's a great movie, by the way.
I love Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, I love all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Third one, it's okay. It's not my favorite, but
The first 2 were the best.
they were great. Yeah. Serge, that guy was funny. That whole interaction when he's at the art department. Get out of here. No, I cannot.
Yeah.
That was fun.
The initial scene in the original Beverly Hills Cop with the cigarette truck. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then people forget that Paul Reiser was in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's $5 for gifted and 2 for standard. That's weird. Maybe $5 gifts out. Multiple? I don't know. I'll have to ask. Thank you for bringing that up because that's interesting. It's from what I understood, it was only supposed to be multiples of whatever. If you wanted to send out crew or if you wanted to send out whatever. So yeah.
Johnny, before we get out of here, if you will touch on Lawrence Todd's, because I would like to touch on this for a minute.
So the part that gets less attention is PTSD. I mean, still love the town I policed in, and I see some of the places I had things go down frequently. I still live.
And
I'm sorry, I still live.
yeah,
And
this is a very, very big thing in our profession. If you look at the old guard, it was bottle it up, keep it to yourself.
right.
Um,
Well,
if
that's like that's that goes from the military.
Yeah.
To,
you
even
were,
in everyday average life, if
you were
something
labeled as weak.
yeah, exactly.
We are trying to change that, and there are now programs being offered through my state and several other states that are what they call a post-critical incident seminar,
Right.
which helps cope with some of these PTSD issues from doing this job. What we do is not all beds of roses and flowers. I've seen things that most people have never seen in their life, and I've seen it multiple times. It's not something that I would wish on my worst enemy.
Right.
And
Well, I mean, how we deal with mental health in this country is a fucking joke to begin with. So.
Well, I agree with you 100% on that. I had an instance that I lived with for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I was able to get through that with this program.
Yeah.
And it has made me a better person in the long run. There's always those demons in the back of your head. And I agree with that 1000%. Mental health funding is needed across the board. Absolutely. Freaking
Yep. Yep.
But I just kind of wanted to touch on that. There is a lot of PTSD in officers, along with our military and even other first responders, your 911 dispatchers, your firefighters,
do you
your
remember,
ambulance.
speaking of PTSD and the dispatchers, do you remember that incident that happened? I think it was in Canada. No, not Canada. I can't remember where it was, but the guy who decapitated another passenger. Do you remember that incident?
Mm-mm.
It was on a Greyhound bus. Well, one of my customers, when I worked for the cell phone company, one of my customers came in and when I first met her, she was on leave from her job as a dispatch for Greyhound, not even for, not even
Yeah.
for whatever. They had their own dispatch that would help out, whatever. Well, she was the one who initially took that call and heard everything that was going on of the decapitation and whatnot, having to keep this in and bring the police in and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that fucked her up. Eventually, she left that job. She couldn't go back.
Well, and that happens more than you think.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say they offered her a 6-week kind of thing, and they were kind of like, well, there's 6 weeks, and my wife works in banking, and when she worked in retail banking, she got robbed 3 times in like 2 months. One was a note passer, one was a bomb threat. They actually had to call. They called out. So fun. It's not funny, but it's funny peculiar because the guy walks in, he's got a backpack on. He drops his backpack at the center kiosk, walks up to the counter, passes a note, says, "I've got a bomb. Give me all the money in your register or in your drawer." So here's the money, whatever. And when he leaves, he forgets to take his bag because he was like, "Holy fuck, it actually worked." Forgets to take his bag. Well, they had to call bomb squad out, and they detonated this bag in the middle of the fucking street. It turns out the only thing that was in there was a laptop, no bomb. And then there was another one where a lady came in and held him up at gunpoint. Now it was a replica firearm, but when you're not used to seeing firearms, and all of a sudden there's somebody with a gun in your face telling you to give you all your money.
Yeah, you're just looking at the hand cannon that you're staring down the barrel of.
Exactly. Do you want to take that chance? So, and I think, hell, our primary care physician was like, "Yeah, you just need to go back to work." Like, Are you fucking kidding me? That's your advice to somebody who had a gun pointed at him, who's dealing with some serious fucking issues. I can only imagine, and here she's a woman. I'm not saying, because she's a woman, whatever, but well, yeah, I can say this as a man that we are at least old school, especially as older men. We
Mm-hmm.
are looked at negatively for having emotional response. It's weakness to be afraid. It's weakness. You have to be tough it out, tough it out. Like fucking hell. Are you kidding me?
Well, I'll have to say, Johnny, that if you're not a little afraid doing my job, you're going to
You
get
shouldn't.
killed.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that job. 'Cause
You should. There's things that scare me, but it's pushing through that fear that separates the the weak from the strong.
Yeah,
So there's that.
right. Freight Edges has just gifted 5 plot hole memberships. Thank you so much. Absolutely appreciate that. Make sure you use your emojis with your new memberships, all you new guys and girls. I gotta say that it's always interesting to have someone come on who, who does this, right? It's one thing being like an armchair quarterback to these situations where I'm looking at, case law and whatever and making my commentary based on what I see sovereign citizens or whoever do it. It's always good to have the experience to come in and say, well, this is what we're doing over here. And so TK Telemac, I understand. Like, I get it. I really do. Says, I think you have a slight bias, blind eye to the absolute corruption and horrendous treatment of citizens every day.
Well, I would like to respond to that.
Yeah, I would like to give you the opportunity to respond to that.
Not being in a major metro area and being more in a rural area, I wouldn't say that I have a blind eye. It's a lack of, what was the word that I would look for here? Lack of experience in seeing that.
Yeah.
I don't see that in my area. So it's not that I have a blind eye to it. It's the lack of experience with that. Now, do I see it here on YouTube? Do I see it in the news? Absolutely. And I wouldn't say that it's a blind eye or a bias. I'm not so naive to think that there is not bad things going on in places around this country and around this world. I'm not that naive. I know there is. And are all cops good? Absolutely not. There are bad ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our job as good police officers to weed out the bad ones.
Sure.
That is just my opinion. Whether people
honestly,
don't like it, or indifferent about it.
Honestly, I think that it should be more than just your opinion. I think it should be part of your duty.
Well, let me rephrase that. It is something that I do look at. If I do see somebody doing something wrong, I do take action upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be, have a conversation with that person's supervisor or have a conversation with that individual person. I'm not going to let Memphis happen in front of me. That's not going to happen.
Right.
I'm not going to stand back and be like, oh, well, not my problem. Yeah, it is my problem. That's where I step in and
yeah, right.
And say, okay, y'all need to back the hell up. And, this needs to stop now.
Exactly. I think if more police officers, like the more of the quote good cops, would step up and say, look, what your actions are putting targets on my back.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And Road No Last Name, honestly, a lot of people get what the blue line is. And I agree 100%. Officers should be holding their fellow officers to a higher standard. I think police officers should be held to a higher standard. That is where I stand on that. But the blue line, if you've really not studied what the meaning of the blue line is, we are the ones between law and order and chaos. We are holding that thin blue line between chaos and law and order.
the popularity, I mean, that the real popularity of that came out of Dallas, not but
Yeah.
30 minutes from where I'm standing or sitting right now. I remember that as it happened, and I remember being critical of some of the response. I it was kind of funny that it was a BLM protest, and this goes on. You have a black gentleman who shows up with an AR, who even before any APBs or put out anything was put out, as this thing is happening, he goes and turns his firearm in. He's like, "Look, boom, here's this. Here's my stuff. Don't want anything to do with this. Don't mistake me for with the actions of this person over here." And they still say, "Hey, this we're looking for this guy." And he's like, "Why are you looking for me? I'm right here, and I've turned in my stuff." Like, it was a mistake for certain. But I think that's something that when it comes across, like, no, this guy, not a person of interest. We're talking to him right now. That's something that should be squashed immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, that I do remember that. I do remember watching that as it happened. Yeah. Cheshire Cat says, if you don't clean up, you're going to get a beat down by the boss, and we aren't going to take your side. I will clean up. I'm going to do that right now. Okay.
I'd say he's probably going to get a beat down anyway.
I'm going to get one anyways. But that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes.
But Johnny, I appreciate you having me up.
Absolutely.
I hope we can do this again sometime and spend some time and answer some questions. I'm sure not everybody in your chat agrees with me, and that's the great thing about our society.
Well,
is
that's
we
what
can
I
have
try
a
to do.
conversation with
Yeah.
rationalization, and it may be that we agree to disagree, but
Right.
we can always continue that conversation another day and maybe come to some common ground.
Right. I mean, this channel has always been about bringing opposing ideas together and having a discussion and not a shouting match. And of course, me making fun of people doing stupid shit. But that's
Well, yeah.
kind of more sad. But
I kind of do that too, but
that being said, make sure you check out Blue Bear over on YouTube. It's youtube.com at Blue Bear, correct?
at Blue Bear 1.
Blue Bear 1, because apparently Blue Bear was already taken. So
Yeah, it was.
there you go. Get over there and check it out. I know you've got more. So you're more of you analyze stops, shootings, etc. Police involved, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So go check them out. Leave them some love. If you have bad things to say, go say some bad things, and you guys have a discussion, hash it out. But make sure you check them out. Will you release often or not so often?
I try to release at least once a week with my schedule right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's going to change, and I'm going to up things. Like last week, I did 3 shorts and a video. I'm trying to get a little more involved and try to do a couple videos. I'm going to try to start throwing in a live stream every now and then with different topics. I'm going to try to throw in some different topics. I've been doing a lot of police chases lately because they're easier for me to do.
Yeah.
With my work schedule. I'm trying to learn more of the editing, as far as blurring and doing things like that to make it YouTube friendly on the officer involved shooting, so I don't get my channel nuked.
Sure.
But I encourage everyone to come check it out. I try to comment on everything I can. My channel's small enough that I can. If you leave a comment, I try to reply. It's going to get to the point one of these days that I can't do that all the time, but I'd love for everybody to come over, check out the channel. And if it's something that you like, click the subscribe button and the notification bell, and hopefully I can keep you entertained. I try to do some funny stuff in between some of my serious stuff, but, it's one of those things. This is something that I do part-time because I enjoy it. I enjoy learning how to edit videos and do different things. It's another thing for me to learn how to do that when I do decide to retire, that I've got something that I can fall back on in the future. Maybe do some commercial stuff or voiceover stuff for different companies and support my family that way.
Absolutely. It's always fun too. You enjoy it. It's okay. And Cheshire Cat, yes, I do. Okay, I'm not going to lie. That being said, it's time for me to get out of here. I will be posting more content. I've just been super busy with film project that's coming up. As I don't know if you can tell, but I've been hitting the weight room quite a bit. lots of gym time because I've got to get in shape for this particular role. It's going to be super fun, but that's been taking up a lot of my free time. But I will have a couple more videos coming out soon. That being said, it's time to go. Love you all. You guys are awesome. Even the people who hate me, still love you because you deserve love in your life or some cheesy shit like that. All right, everybody. It's time to go. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.